Hey, good morning. It's Sunday morning. This is the Cloak and Dagger weekly briefing with Albert Marco and myself, Tony Nash. We're starting the show with college football because,
Oh,
I mean, Michigan won yesterday too, right? But,
yeah.
we actually have a decent year this year. So I just want to give South Carolina their due. I'm actually using a South Carolina coffee mug this morning because it was just a great day in college football yesterday. So,
Yeah, I mean, even Michigan, they played so bad. I mean, they're a young team, right? They had like five turnovers.
yeah.
And you don't win usually if you have five turnovers. And thankfully we have an all-star kicker, so got
Yeah,
the
you've
job
got a good
done.
quarterback, you've got a
Very good.
solid coach, you've got a solid team. It's like I mean they should be in the top 11. I'm not sure if they will be,
Yeah,
but
they have to beat Maryland, and then they're gonna have to beat Ohio State, and some other things are gonna have to fall in
yeah, they
place.
can beat Ohio State. Come
Yeah,
on.
of course, everyone can beat Ohio State. Those crooks.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, good. So, okay, so there are a number of things we're gonna talk about today. Sorry, I've got my notes here, so I need to open them up. Okay, we're gonna start in Asia. We're gonna look at Japan, China, Taiwan, Philippines, what's happening in Asia. There are obviously some things that we've written about over the past few weeks. We're gonna move to uh, Venezuela. A lot happening in Venezuela. I made a comment about kind of a Gulf of Tonkin moment. Like, are we going to see a provocative moment like that? Or, what's the end game there is really what people keep asking us.
Hmm.
And then we're going to end with Trump. I mean, the guy had a pretty terrible week last week, and he's just he keeps stepping in it. Albert and I have some very different views on that stuff, which is going to be fun. So let's get into it. And hey, we may end with some more sports stuff. So let's just see. Okay, so let's get into Asia. So Japan announced a couple weeks ago that, or no, they announced last week that they are going to be more assertive if China cuts off supply chains and surrounds Taiwan. They didn't give much detail, which we wrote a piece about how the ambiguity that Japan is giving off is just like what China does to everybody else. China wants specificity from the counterparties, but they want to give ambiguity on their side. So what's really interesting with this Sanai Taichi announcement is they they had a pretty ambiguous statement that could have far-reaching effects, and China is demanding specificity, which is awesome to watch, right? They're demanding specificity. Now, China has announced some live fire exercises just offshore to kind of mess with Japan and Korea, all that stuff. But it's great to see China struggle with the ambiguity. That's my big takeaway from this. Albert, like, I mean, you obviously pay attention to Northeast Asia. Like, what are your thoughts on what's happened with the new PM in Japan, how China is responding, and kind of the regional dynamic there?
Well, this is about time that Japan steps up to the plate, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's always been in the media and all these pundits and whatever always talk about a US versus China, those superpowers. China's not a superpower, right? China's not even the clear superpower in Asia because
But wait, they have an aircraft carrier.
oh, wow, yeah, an aircraft carrier. One.
It's an IKEA box made
Yeah.
aircraft carrier, right?
The Japanese Navy is nothing to be trifled with, to be quite
Right.
honest with you. All right, they're supported by U.S. equipment. They have U.S. Full U.S. backing. They have experience from World War II. Right. They're not somebody that should be pushed around. And finally, Japan is stepping up and saying, "Listen, China, we're here too. We are a player,
Right.
and you're not going to ignore us at this point."
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the calculation of military conflict is for every $1 spent on defense, $7 of offense has to be spent to break it. Right now, you go at China, in their own territorial waters or on their land. It's not going to be a cakewalk. There's no question about that, right? But China has the same problem going into Taiwan. It's like, look, it's not going to be a cakewalk to go into there, right? And on top of that, like if the Japanese start entering the mix, it's China's navy is completely obliterated at that point. You know, they're not going to be able to go into Taiwan. They're not going to be able to have complete dominance over the South Asia seas. This is a long time coming, and I'm really liking that Japan is starting to take notice, and they're starting to be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, if you want to be a main player in global trade, you need to have a presence geopolitically to where you're respected from your allies and your adversaries, and
Right.
that's what Japan is doing. I mean, I give kudos to the new leadership there. It's a long time that should have been doing this.
Yeah, Japan is China's second largest trading partner. That's total trade imports and exports, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, China is making a lot of these noises, but they have to also factor in their economic relationship with the strained US-China economic relationship and strains on the Europe-China economic relationship. China needs to be careful that they don't upset Japan because Japan, before the 2008 financial crisis, Japan was the major driver of the China plus one sourcing strategy. Okay.
Mhm.
So they're not afraid to move things out of China, which they have, but not enough, right? So I could very easily see China saying, hey, China or Japan saying, hey, if you're going to be this way, we're going to go plow tons of money into Indonesia to develop it as an industrial economy. That may sound crazy, but I could see them doing it. Okay. They're going to plow more money into India because Japan and India have a great relationship, right? So plow money into other places to develop those economies. They're the ones who largely in the spring of 2007, when China announced some social payments, you had to pay out more for your workers. It was the Japanese and the Korean factories that loaded up in Guangdong province and moved things down to Vietnam to really kickstart Vietnam's industrial economy. So Japan, once they get motivated, they'll change things really quickly.
Yeah, they're precise. They're intelligent. They're logical people. I love Japan. I love everything about Japan. Right. It's funny because what Japan is doing today is what I've been absolutely bitching about the Europeans to do for over a decade.
Yep.
Like you have to get into these conflicts. You have to push your power around. Otherwise, your trade will dwindle, and that's what we're
Yep.
seeing. We're seeing a complete hollowing out of the industrial base of Europe because they don't take the initiative and do these things.
Yep. So a couple things just context-wise. There's some agreements called the Four Documents from I think 1974 that Japan signed with China that said they recognize one China and all this other stuff, and
Mhm.
they apologized for all their World War II stuff. And we have to acknowledge that that happened at a time that Nixon was kind of opening up the relationship between the US and China.
Mhm.
Japan was very much directed by the US in terms of foreign policy. So the US probably said, hey, you need to do this thing. And Japan did it. And, so the Chinese will always point to those documents. Again, they want specificity from other people. They want to point to other people on the agreements, but they don't want to obey the agreements themselves. The other thing that's key here is under Abe in 2015. Japan changed from a completely defensive structure to
Mhm.
one that could be offensive. So this change in 2015 that Abe did, he was her mentor, and she's completely taking advantage of that to make these types of announcements. So I think it's a huge game changer for Northeast Asia, massive.
Oh, it's incredible, incredible move. I'd love to see South Korea join the fray, but you know how South Korea is.
They can't. They can't.
I know,
South
I know.
Korea can't.
I know, I know.
They're so tied into China. And what I've said for years, South Korea is politically American-ish, but economically they're so dependent on China they can't do it.
Yeah, they also
So
don't like the Japanese, like a lot.
yeah, yeah, there's kind of a lot of history there. Okay, so let's talk really quickly. We had a question from somebody about
Mhm.
South China Sea. So you had mentioned China's Navy. Can you talk about China's Navy and power projection in the South China Sea?
Well, the South China Sea is okay. So the strategy of the Chinese with the Spratly Islands was to create a layered defense, right, against U.S. any kind of U.S. incursions, down the road. Um, they have so many of these like militarized fishing boats that they have out, patrolling the areas and whatnot. They have a few aircraft carriers that are antiquated. They're not really up to par, but they have a lot of submarines. Okay, granted, a lot of them are noisy. They're so noisy, the diesel ones, that they can hear them from San Diego. No
Yep.
joke, right?
Yep.
They do have a few nuclear submarines, but again, this is the same tactics that the Soviets used during the US, during their time. Is let's just make so many that it's like numbers favors us, but the problem is the maintenance down the road and the
Maintenance,
lack of
training, everything.
everything down the road actually is becomes a negative, right? Where the U.S. has tripled its power in the last 20, 30 years. China has gone up, but only in numbers and manufacturing and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. They haven't made anything technologically advanced on the level where the U.S. is. So when you're looking at the South China Seas, it's like it's one of those things where it's like we hope to like deter the U.S. based on numbers, but the reality is now that this new Japan component comes in, it's like now there's an even bigger problem on the Sea of Japan. So
Well, it's like this. Every time I buy like a home electronic, like a vacuum cleaner that's from China, I always buy a 3-year warranty because I know it's not going to like 2.5, 3 years. It's going to start, not working, right? And so if you look at all this military kit that China has pushed out, you really have to wonder how durable is it? I mean, I seriously question that, how durable it is. And I think a lot of the stuff within 5 years it's really we don't know if it's going to work or not.
yeah, I mean, listen, if you look at tonnage, the United States is far ahead of China in tonnage. That's more of a better comparison between navies than just simple number of fishing boats. I mean, Albania can go out there and buy, 500 dinghies and declare itself a major naval
Yeah.
power. That's silly. It's a silly notion. China did try to expand the South China Seas like layered defense by going into the other islands, like the Marshall Islands, and that region over there, Solomon Islands, and so on and so Vanuatu or whatever. Name your little Pacific island, right? I mean, the U.S. finally had put a stop to that and made an effort to block that because you don't want it to spread. You don't want to spread
Right.
cancer spread everywhere. You got to
Right.
stop it at some point. South China Seas. Right now, of course, the Chinese dominated in terms of numbers, but again, the U.S. really hasn't pushed it. And if they did, the Chinese would just back off and, you know, hope for peace, just like Maduro is in Venezuela.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I think the U.S. announced a freedom of navigation exercise
Mhm.
through the South China Sea over this past week. So what I think is very interesting is Japan took an armed fishing boat from China and took two vessels and kind of uh, pincered it in and escorted it out of their waters this past week. There's some great photos of that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the U.S. on behalf of the Philippines and maybe even the Philippines start doing that to some of these Chinese vessels that are in Philippines waters. I think it's game on. I think they're all getting more serious about it. And I think we just have to see what happens over the next, say, 6 months to really understand what direction it's going to go.
Yeah, I think that's another variable that we didn't talk about is like the Philippines and so on and so forth, right? They're going to be obviously on the side of the U.S. and whatnot. At some point, I just think that the Philippines need to sink one of those Chinese ships and just test to see what the Chinese are really, really willing to do, right? But aside from the little chatter that they have of the grand imperialism of the Chinese dynasties and so on and so forth, right? Yeah,
Jung-ha and all that.
yeah. I mean, it's just. But at some point, you're gonna have to test it, right? You're
Yeah.
just gonna have to have the will. I mean, Japan being more forceful is a good sign. I think the Philippines should just take it to the next level and just accidentally ram a Chinese ship and sink it.
Yeah.
See what
Or at
happens.
least put a hole in the hull. like
Yeah,
happened
you know,
to
like
Americans a
really
couple
just
while ago.
embarrass it.
Yep, exactly. Okay, good. That's great. Let's talk about Venezuela next. You mentioned Maduro being afraid, and I saw, I think yesterday, that he was singing John Lennon's "Imagine" in front of a crowd of people, like he's a peacemaker artist type. So it's interesting how these extreme socialists, communists love to talk about peace, but then they starve their people or, whatever, and they do all sorts of unimaginable things to prop their economy up. So, what I guess I want to eventually get to, what is the end game for Venezuela? I've joked and said that it's statehood. I don't think that's true, but what is the end game for Venezuela?
So from Maduro's side or from our side, right? Because
Yes.
from Maduro's, yes, from Maduro's side, I mean, he wants to retain power, right? And it's quite comical when, um, for years, you know, Hugo Chavez and Maduro, they're talking tough, and we're with China and we're with Russia. Uh, that all changes when you have a few U.S. aircraft carriers on your shores, and China
And
and Russia
Iran.
and yeah, and Iran, and none of them are picking up the phone and helping them, right? Because they can't. That's the reality of it. They can't. There is no multipolarity in this world, right? There is none. It is the United States and everybody else, right? And now Maduro is sitting there, you know, like rightly worried about a bomb falling on his head, right? Trying to figure out how can I diffuse this situation. I mean, what I think he's probably going to get some scapegoats and arrest some drug cartel people, right? And offer them to the United States and, if, you know, any other assets that the United States wants. I don't think it'll be enough. I mean, maybe to delay some things, but I think that the United States is probably going to hit targets within Venezuelan territory, right? Not political targets, but anything that's deemed to be narco related slash political is fair game, right? Whether that be some of Maduro's closest allies on the ground, I think that that's where I would first target. To be quite honest with you, Trump. I don't know what Trump's end game is here because you know once you start these kind of missions, it's like you better have a very clear cut strategy on what you want to happen. Is it Maduro being ousted? Well, then you better be, you know, striking targets that's going to do that, not just media show for a couple bombs flying.
Yeah, what if their strategy is just to tire him out? Have him waste resources, have him get upset, have him do a bunch of stupid rah-rah speeches, and just to tire him out so that the
But
people in Venezuela just get really bored by him. And
but that hasn't worked for the past like 10 years.
what have we done for
Yeah,
Venezuela?
but I mean,
Nothing.
we've supported the opposition for a little while until that communist Blinken got in there and screwed
Right.
up Latin America.
Yeah,
To
but I mean,
but but
supporting.
we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything in Latin America. We've ignored Latin
Yeah,
America for 50 years,
exactly.
right? And all the steps that we've done to pressure Maduro, even under Trump's regime, is kind of half-assed, right? I've been calling for a shift in Latin American strategy by the U.S. for a good 15 years,
You have.
right? Yeah, and specifically Venezuela.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. Early in his tenure, Trump put Colombia's president back in the box. He tried to be very anti-American. Somebody sat him down and said, "Look, this is not how it works." And so he speaks up every so often, but for the most part, he's, I think, contained. Venezuela is different, of course, and they have the courage of countries that are halfway around the world
Mm-hmm.
who aren't going to support him, right? I'm curious. We've seen some protests in Mexico over the past couple days, where I love the eye roll, where it's largely students protesting anti-corruption on anti-Sheinbaum officials. So that's being presented as the students being tired of kind of the drug cartel driven government. Do you think that has any chance of getting traction?
No,
Yeah. I mean,
no. The
I don't think
biggest
so either.
no. I mean, honestly, Sheinbaum is a little mini Maduro. It's just she has to be more careful because the U.S. is right on the border. But Terrible leader for the Mexican people.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I see in Mexico right now is I think I wrote about it is PMI, which is like the Treasury versus Pemex and the control of the oil sector over there. The Treasury wants access to all that money, and but they're not going to be able to. It's a situation. It's actually a really bad situation for U.S. oil industry because if Venezuela goes offline because of whatever conduct that the U.S. does against Maduro, you're having a situation where Mexican oil that usually fills in the gaps is not going to be available, right? So
Oh,
that would be
no.
really bad.
Their
It'd
volume
be
is terrible.
it'd be very bad because the price of the WTI would probably go up to like 65 $75 really quick, right? It's a problem because Mexico could start trending towards Chavez and Maduro like oil industry, like in Venezuela, where
You think
things.
so? Hmm.
Yeah, it's that big of a problem that I don't think anybody is talking about. And obviously, I got this information from a couple oil executives that don't want to really talk about it, but it's something that the United States media really, really needs to look into because it's very
They
problematic.
won't. Come on.
No, of course
U.S.
they
media?
because they want to glorify the socialist leaders like
Right.
Sheinbaum and Maduro and all these other clowns,
Hmm.
Mamdani and whatnot. They'll never go against them.
Right. So, okay, so we still haven't arrived at an end game for Venezuela. So
It's
when?
difficult.
When?
It's
I guess that's my biggest question is when? How long does this last?
before Q2 of next year.
Okay, why?
Because well, I mean, there's time frames that like things need to be get done, right? And it has to be before midterms. You don't want bombs flying around Latin America and the Caribbean right during midterms, right? And
Why
on
not
top of
though? I mean, people get behind that stuff.
people don't like to see that sort of stuff, but on top of that, you could cause an inflationary problem with oil and whatnot. You also have, I think Q1, Q2 is going to be really bad for the U.S. stock market. So scapegoating, a war of freedom or a war on narco terrorists that are the Venezuelan government is a convenient thing. I would do. That's exactly what I would do. I would scapegoat whatever market or economic problems there are on the horizon on something like this. Just like
Sure.
the Ukraine war, like the Putin price hikes and
Yeah.
whatever. We've seen this over and over again.
Yeah.
There's the U.S. government, any government, not just the U.S., finds scapegoats that are outside of their own policies.
Yes. Okay, so Q2 next year, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I could see it stretching through the midterms just to get some kind of nationalistic whip up going and then have it,
Hmm.
end just before the midterm so that people feel really confident and, crude is falling going into the
Hmm.
midterm. So I could see that lasting a little bit longer, kind of wear him down, embarrass him, that sort of thing, and then just take him out. So okay, let's move on to Trump because it has been a weird couple of weeks. And so, I've thought Trump did all of this foreign policy stuff, went to Northeast Asia, declared victory about a bunch of stuff in Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, came back. He spent a lot of time on foreign policy, which is a good distraction for presidents when things aren't kind of going well.
Hmm.
He's come back. He made these comments about H-1B visas last week or the week before about saying this was on the Laura Ingraham show. We wrote about this, how he said there aren't enough skilled workers in the US, and he said it three times during her interview, which is terrible optics, right?
Hmm.
Really terrible. And on some level, if you listen to the whole interview, you kind of get what he's going at, but it's not his typical punchy style of saying something and letting it stick. He was very convoluted
Hmm.
on it. You have the U.S. economy, which is really questionable, especially since we don't have the October data coming out. Now, it's all propaganda anyway, but you don't have that data coming out to give people a directional lead on where they want to go. Okay. And then we have all this Epstein stuff, which I'm not sure people outside of the US, I'm not sure people outside of the US are really understand how much the 20-year-olds who voted for Trump, how much they put into that Epstein issue. You have a bunch of like older folks who are interested, but in general, it's the 20 somethings who are really riveted on this Epstein issue.
Mm.
And so, we had all these Dem accusations coming out saying Trump was in all these emails. And then I think it was on Friday, Trump said, we're going to investigate Clinton and Epstein and all these other guys and Epstein. And so it's a weird issue. But it's one that just won't go away. So with that, Albert, what's going on?
Circus. That's what it is. Distraction, circus.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the Epstein thing is big, like you said, in some people's minds, and rightfully so. It's kind of weird the way he's acting about it, like, oh, it was hoax and blah blah blah, this and that. Makes him look really bad. Right? The optics of it is really bad for him.
Yeah.
The optics for a lot of issues at this point is really bad for Trump. They're fumbling a lot of issues. It's just that they don't care. They're not going to they're not going for re-election. They just don't care, right? His ego seems to drive some, not some, but a good majority of the commentary that he puts out into the media. Whenever the market, falls down pretty harshly and polling starts to go down, and the next thing you know, some magical market rally happens on some magical rhetoric from Bissant or Trump or whoever else that they have parading out there in the media. It's kind of
Isn't
tiring from my
isn't that
perspective.
politics generally? I mean, isn't
Yeah,
that
but
DC generally?
it is DC generally, but this is like so scripted that, like, how can you not see it? Like investing in the stock market, there's no more fundamentals on this,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Just look at Trump. So figure out when his ego is a little bit hurt, and then just go along. And what do they do is they use Mag 8, not Mag 7 anymore, because broadcam's in the list,
Yeah.
so it's Mag 8, right? Just figure out which one's been beat down over the last 2 weeks and just put some money on it, and next thing you know, it's up 14%.
Yeah.
Just
Hashtag not financial advice. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not financial advice. I'm just telling you what I do, and
Yeah.
it's not complicated, right?
Yeah.
Usually, you go back 10 years ago, I'm looking at EBITDA and
Right.
all these different things, and next thing then you're doing risk and blah blah blah, and nowadays it's just like, well, just do this. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy, right?
Yeah, let's for a minute talk about this H-1B issue because I think it has a lot to do, from Trump's perspective, it has a lot to do with getting particularly Asian investment into the U.S. The South Korean investment, he mentioned that specifically during that Ingram interview. And I think it's definitely an issue on the U.S.-India trade discussions.
Mhm.
And so my suspicion is that he's been so deep in that stuff that he's really kind of disregarded a lot of the base, and especially these 20 somethings who are already upset about Epstein. Then they hear this about H-1B, and we hear about all these recent grads who are looking for jobs. And it's like anger times two, right? Or more, because they're hitting Epstein, they're ignoring it. We've had, and just let me just deviate on Epstein a little bit. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas, who's the guy from Tennessee? Thomas Massey.
That's how I'm messy.
Trump's kind of sidelined those guys and made fun of them. I mean, these are not mainline politicians, right? So anybody reading this stuff, again, outside of the US, MTG is really kind of a fringe politician who people love to roll out when they want to make a point about something.
Hmm.
Thomas Massey is kind of a fringe, almost libertarian politician who people roll out as an example for things. So hearing that Trump is sidelining these guys, I don't think it's a big deal to most people, but it makes a lot of headlines. So, but we have this H-1B issue that I think he's trying to say, hey, if people are going to put billions of dollars here, we need to allow them to put their workers here. I don't think many Americans would disagree with that for a limited period of time to transfer skills. But the big question is around India, because something like 87%, I know that's a wrong number, but it's somewhere in that ballpark of H-1B visas are Indian workers who are making less than, I think on average, probably 10% or more less than the market wage for what they're doing. So this is what Americans are upset about because they're doing, it's domestic wage arbitrage with foreign workers.
So, this is it's not just that, not just the visas is a problem, right? I don't know if the media really picked up, or even pundits or Twitter, anybody picked up on the fact that Trump said that, oh, well, now we're going to have 300,000 Chinese students coming to the United States also on visas.
600.
So, oh, is it 600 now?
Yeah.
Okay. Explain to me, please, anybody, how is that MAGA, right? You claim to be America first, so on and so forth, and then all of a sudden you're rolling back these H-1B visas, right? You're rolling back the 600,000 students from China coming in, right? You're like where where are where is America first in this point, right? And they had the statistic come out that I think 18 to 25-year-olds were not, the unemployment rate was like 9.3. That's a bold-faced lie. It's probably over 20, right? It's the highest since 2016, and probably the highest probably since 2008, right? And this is the problem I have with Trump's entire administration and his policies and his double talk, and I'm just fed up with it,
Yeah.
right? Do what you campaigned on,
Yeah.
right?
I almost think that things have to get bad before action is taken. So I'll just
They
say,
they are bad, Tony. They
no,
are
no,
bad, but
I
they're
think they
lying.
have to get worse for him to pay attention to it. I'm not saying they're not bad now. They're bad. But I personally, I don't have any issue with foreign students in the US.
I don't either.
They, from the university's perspective, largely they pay full tuition, and they have great economic impacts on the community and all that stuff. But if they're to the point where they're displacing qualified Americans for those seats, that's a problem, right? And if we look at what Australia did last year, Australia, because it's such a destination for kind of the B team of Asian students,
Mhm.
Australia had to put a limit on the percentage of Asian students, or we'll say foreign students, but we know it's Asian students coming into Australian universities. So they put a percentage cap on that, and the Australian academic community was really upset about it. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from Americans going, and let's just keep in mind, we have a lot of capacity in U.S. universities. They've built up a lot over the last 20, 30 years.
Okay, we do and we don't, right? You say that we have a lot of capacity, except for our student class size. The class sizes are like 600 people, right? How do you learn in that? How do you learn in that capacity
Are you
when you have
talking
an
out of high school, or are you talking
no
out
college,
of,
right?
okay.
You have 1,000 people going to some of
Oh,
these
class sizes, individual.
class
Yeah, yeah,
sizes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
class sizes are incredibly large, right? Not only
Yeah,
does it create a strain on the
you're right.
teachers, right, but the students aren't learning, right?
Right,
And then some of these degrees that the American students are pursuing are like they're like uh, theoretical colonialism in Indochina and blah blah blah, right? Stupid
right,
shit that nobody's going to hire you for,
right.
right? And why aren't we addressing those things? Like cut off federal aid for those type of stupid majors.
Yeah, I think that's
Make believe.
fine. And the problem is a lot of those um, classes like that are really largely just the American kids taking. Okay,
Yeah,
the
but
Asian kids coming in are few of them are taking those classes unless it's a requirement.
yeah, but then that goes into like you're saying that we don't have skilled workers. Trump's saying we don't have skilled people to go into the workforce, right? Well, why? It starts at the university level, right?
Yeah,
We're not strict on the universities on like what they can and can't do for federal aid, for federal money for majors, right? We don't care anymore.
yeah. So I'll tell you a story I heard this past week. So a friend's friend graduated from Baylor recently, has a graduate degree in computer science, specializing in AI. Great student, did great in class, had great internships. He couldn't get a job because these low cost H-1Bs were doing the work that he would normally go for.
Yeah,
Okay. So American kid, American citizen, very good American university. He couldn't get a job. He ended up having to do something really mundane, which I understand, an entry level job, right? But everything he went for, even at a very low level within his specialization, was getting filled with H-1Bs.
yeah.
Okay.
They want this. They want this though. They want it because they want the labor numbers to come down. They don't want because it affects inflation, right? They want to fake these numbers, and this is one way to do it at the
Yeah.
expense of the American students.
Yeah. So this is now, I'll say my software company, we don't employ any foreigners. We don't even outsource stuff to Asia. Okay. It's all done here, right?
Mhm.
Because I believe that we have the talent here. In fact, I know that we have the talent here, even for advanced AI stuff. So when you see someone, and for people who don't understand the technology sector, when you see someone saying, we need this person to come in to do this AI work, AI is not, there is leading edge AI, but 99% of AI activities can be done by a coder who went to a second or third rate school.
Mhm.
It doesn't require an MIT or Carnegie Mellon or any of those degrees.
Yeah, even expanding it further, right? Because I'm big in the sports,
Yep,
right? If you look at the rosters of the universities in different sports, right? Tennis, uh, golf, so on and so forth, right? Soccer, um, they're 80% foreigners.
what?
Yes, they're 80%. In some tennis teams and universities, there's zero Americans.
Wow.
That, I mean, what the hell are we doing here? Right?
Right.
You're taking away opportunities for American athletes at these
Yep.
universities to
Who
get
are
scholars
good?
who are
We're a
good,
sports
right?
society.
Who are good, right? And you are allowing Europeans or Asia, whoever, foreigners to come in there and take up the entire roster, right?
Yep.
I understand that you want your team to be competitive and so on. You want the best athletes, so on and so forth. But this is America, and you're using federal funds, right? All these
Yeah, that's
universities
that's the kicker. If there are no federal funds,
do what you want.
then do what you want.
Do
If
what
you're
you
a
want.
100% private university, you take no federal funds, then that's fine. But if you're taking federal funds, there have to be some limitations around the exposure you have to kind of foreign students. And yeah,
Yeah,
I understand there are cultural exchange programs, all that stuff. That's all fine.
yeah. Like John
But
Calipari said that he's not even recruiting high school players anymore for basketball. Zero. So there's zero chance. So these kids, instead of going, the kids and the parents that sit there and spend all their money and all their time for 4, 5, 6, 10 years in the clubs, right? And
it's
and hoping to get a scholarship are just shut out at the
Yeah.
moment.
So, Albert, let's talk about that a little bit because I'm not sure everyone understands. There are parallel tracks in sports in the US for, say, kids who are in school and
Hmm.
then kids who take club sports. And then there's kind of rec sports, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, from the time you're probably 7 or 8, you choose one of these paths in the US. This isn't a European or East German or, Chinese thing. This is
Hmm.
in the US. So, if your kid is good enough to get on a club team, they're paying huge money for the team fees. They're paying for travel because these club teams travel. They're
Like
paying for
they play,
additional clinics.
they travel like professionals travel
They do. Yep.
in especially because I'm involved with club volleyball. It's Indianapolis, it's New Orleans.
Yep.
Where else are they going? Boston,
Yep.
Kansas City.
Yep. So this isn't just throw your kids in public school and hope for the best. This
No,
is, I want my kid to be excellent at what they do. I have no illusions about the fact that at some point they may fall out of the kind of capabilities. But for those people who stay focused and their kids really are good and they really are competitive, to have them displaced by someone who really isn't as good, but we can count up our, build our team kind of on the cheap or whatever, or get full tuition from them instead of get a scholarship. That's a problem. I can see that.
it's a huge problem. But the biggest problem that American sports has right now, we're deviating off of some things, but the
Yeah,
biggest problem American sports has is at the club level is just a money pit, right? They don't care about developing the kids. Europe is a completely different system.
mhm,
South America, everywhere else is a completely where they have the pro team, and then they have like the under 20s, and then they have the youth, and they develop these kids into being pros because that's how they make their money at the end is these kids playing
right.
pros, right? Here in the United States, in soccer, they have the British infestation, cancerous infestation in U.S. soccer where they're just generating money and don't care about any kind of development of U.S. sports kids at all. Zero at all. It's worse in volleyball. There's absolutely no development in U.S. volleyball. That's why they've been failing at the international level for years now, right? I mean, I just had a couple of Serbian pro guys watch club volleyball scrimmages over this past week, and they said that they were absolutely appalled of how awful the players were, and just no fundamentals. There's
Yeah.
absolutely zero fundamentals, right?
So what about this? What about this? So what if the people who say, hey, it's a competition. So if the kids are better and they come, then so be it. It's America's about competition. So like I don't mean to be a jerk. I'm just like I want to put in that perspective to see how kind of how you respond.
But what comp but the problem is like what competition are we talking about here? Like when the players rely, the coaches look for athleticism first, and then I can coach them into being a player. No, you can't. You suck. You're getting minimum wage, right? You never played volleyball at a high level, and you think you're going to coach a kid to play college D1 or go to
Right,
the pros? That's just
right,
it's a silly notion, right? The kids from a young age should be learned fundamentals first and understanding the sport that they play in first.
right.
And they don't do that here, right? So there is no competition. The competition is whoever jumps highest. That's it.
Yeah.
Run
Okay.
fastest, jump highest. Oh, well, the rest stuff will come. No, you're doing it backwards. That's the way U.S. sports is right now, and I'm absolutely appalled about what it is.
Okay, but not Texas A&M football. Let's just be clear about that. So we do have a Swedish guy on the team, but he's pretty good. So
Yeah, but football's a different thing. That's
right.
an
So
American.
let's get back to bashing Trump. Okay,
Yeah,
so
my favorite right now.
right. So okay, so the let's talk about the U.S. economy because you and I have talked about this a little bit. U.S. economy and markets. Okay, so um, we've had, especially Besant, come out over the past week saying how good things are and how inflation is down and all this other stuff. We've had some trade agreements announced over the past week or so that will allow beef and coffee and other things to come in without tariffs, all this stuff. So is is the economy, we know that jobs are really questionable, probably disastrous for some demographics. um, what's happening with inflation? So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is corporate profits seem to be looking really good. So why is that happening if other things are not looking great?
Well, I'm just Googling something at the moment, and
Yep.
Let's see what Trump says about this. Oh, we have virtually no inflation, right? But you go to the grocery store and stuff is 280% higher than it was in 2020,
Yep.
right?
And he'll
So
blame it on Biden, right? I
you
mean,
can you can you can blame it on whatever you want, right?
right,
Be honest about it. Don't sit there and forbid October data coming out because you know it's bad, right?
right,
Don't say it's permanently lost, permanently lost,
right,
and then sit there and claim there's virtually no inflation. But then he does this to lower grocery prices. But I thought there was no inflation. Like, which is
right,
it, right? You can't talk from both sides of your mouth. You
right.
look like you lose complete credibility, and this is the problem I've had with the Trump administration, specifically Trump, over and over again for the years, and I've been very vocal against it. Right? It's like if you say one thing, don't go out there and say the complete opposite thing the next day.
Yep.
You look stupid,
Yeah.
right? You're making us you're like you're actually belittling us, thinking that we can't see what we're buying at the grocery store. You go get a goddamn hamburger, and it's like $18.
Yep. It's true. Yep. So I think what's interesting about Trump is when he was on the campaign trail, if you watched one speech, you watched them all. He was on message all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so,
As you should be in the
as he
campaign.
should be. But now that he's in office, I mean, his first few months he was on message all the time, but now that he's in office and he's comfortable, it doesn't seem like he's on message all the time. So,
Don't care.
and that's Susie Wiles and other people who need to get him in line to be on message, right? I mean,
Nobody's
it's a
getting
tale
Trump.
of two, it's a tale of two kind of personas, I guess.
Yeah, but nobody's getting Trump in line. Trump doesn't take that shit from anybody. He'll fire his own mother.
Yeah.
If she was the campaign telling him to do something. It's just
Yeah.
that's not how he operates, right?
Yeah. So, okay, so let's talk about midterms. So,
Oh,
so here's my view is this. midterms are a long way away.
Yes,
Okay. There's fundraising for midterms where the Republicans seem to be doing okay, but the actual sentiment for midterms is a long way away. So I see a lot of people saying, oh man, if he keeps this up, the midterms are going to be terrible. Yes, I agree with that.
yes.
But the midterms are a long way away. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't want to really comment on myths. I can give you like an off the cuff comment, like, yeah, they're not
Yeah.
going to be good because what he's doing right now, but they are a long time away. We need to see what the market and the economy does in Q1, Q2,
Yeah.
right? To see before we start assessing what damage the GOP is going to take off of Trump, right?
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. This What we didn't even touch is are the tariffs going to be illegal from Trump, and that's going to make a significant
Nah, they're
impact.
going to be legal. They'll find a way. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I know, but that's going to be a significant impact. If they are illegal, that's going to be a very significant impact on the markets, right?
yeah, they'll find a way. I'm not. When you say there'll be a significant impact on the markets, do you mean a positive impact on the
Negative,
markets?
negative.
Negative impact on
Yeah,
the markets.
negative impact. I think the bonds will go down to ZB will go down to 110. It's not going to be pretty, right? I mean, it might have like a little bit of pop, like, oh, the
Wait, but
tariffs are
I
down.
thought tariffs were taxes on the American people. That's what I was told by everyone, all the economists and experts. Tariffs are taxes on the American people. So if his tariffs are made illegal, then isn't that taking a tax away from the American people? I asked this
It's
sarcastically.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of both, right? Because some companies were sucking it up and swallowing it, and others weren't, right? But now, like, you get rid of that de minimis, right? Everything under $800 used to just go through,
Yeah,
right? Now that's gone, so everything's 40%, no, 15 to 40% higher depending on what you buy,
yeah,
right? So like a $5, a $10 or something is now 13, $14 plus shipping, right? And FedEx and DHL will just send you bills.
oh, shipping is terrible.
Yeah,
My coffee business, it's just, I mean,
yeah, there you go. I mean, I have a side hustle on like watches. I deal
yeah,
with like vintage watches. I love them, and I can't buy any of them because it's a 40% tax on. Although he cut a deal with the Swiss for 15%, but that's still high, right?
right.
I
Yeah.
think we didn't even talk about that. Switzerland.
Yeah, let's talk about Switzerland a little
Well,
bit.
Switzerland was impacted with 39% tariffs on products originating out of Switzerland and whatnot. It absolutely devastating for the watch industry and other industries in Switzerland. They got that down to 15% now. Switzerland promised, I think, like $200 billion in investment and like manufacturing inside the United States. Yeah, okay, sure, that's not going to happen, right?
Right.
They're just
Get
going
2 years
to
down the road and they'll ignore it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're just going to 2 years down the road. I mean, I go to Switzerland often. I think if you had to leave the United States, Switzerland would be number one on the list, right? It's just, I mean, the
Great.
country's clean, it's pretty, the education level is
Parts
high.
of Geneva, a little sketchy, but the rest of the country, great.
Yeah, it's expensive parts of it, but like you're paying for what you get. I mean, everything's
Yeah,
solid. It's beautiful place. I mean,
yeah,
it's right up there, high up on my list of countries outside of the U.S.
yeah.
Um, they're smart. They had taken short-term debt from Janet Yellen, and I know Basant wanted them to go into longer duration. So aside from this deal that happened, I want to see what happened with that. That's what I
Interesting.
really, really want to see is if the Swiss traded out long duration debt for a longer duration.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mm.
Okay, so so if there is Swiss investment in the U.S., my guess is it would largely be in pharmaceuticals. Is that
Yeah,
the expectation?
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
which I mean, uh, what pharmaceuticals? You can't do APIs in the United States because they're dirty. Environmental regulations forbid it, right? Active pharmaceutical ingredients can't do
Yeah,
those, right? So what are you manufacturing here? Out of curiosity, you know?
I think they're going to have to do APIs in the same way they're doing the
They
kind of
should. They
yeah,
should do APIs.
because it's almost all done in India. Almost
India
all
and China,
APIs, whatever
China,
you take,
yeah,
it's
China, India,
India
yeah,
and then China. Yeah,
yep,
exactly. So, I think the Japanese companies, the investment we're getting from Japan, the investment we're getting from Switzerland, probably UK should be heavily encouraged to be in pharmaceuticals.
yeah. I completely agree.
Yeah. So, okay, what else? What else are we missing, Albert? Let's look at markets toward the end of the year. So, from now until December, end of December, what do you expect a major change in markets, directional change, or
I think we'll see a Santa rally, the
okay,
7,000 on the ES. I mean, I think that's what they want. I mean, they'd love to go into Thanksgiving and Christmas, with families saying, "Oh, wow, my 401k is great, or
right?
my Robinhood account is, fantastic.
I
I
agree
don't need
with
to
you.
work anymore because now my hustle is getting dividends from companies instead of
Right,
going out and finding a job."
right.
That's what they
So,
want.
and is that partly driven by the Fed becoming dovish? Because there was like 100% chance of a cut in December, or something near there, and then it fell to 60 something, and now with I suspect that the lack of data from October, the part of the reason they're not releasing that data is so that the Fed is in a corner and they have to cut. One of the reasons they'll have to cut in December is that,
Yeah, I agree. I think that inflation number was going to come back up high, and the Fed would have had not, forced not to cut, logically. At this point, the Fed doesn't really have a reason not to cut another 25 basis
yeah,
points, right?
yeah.
I think it's a disastrous mistake, but whatever. We'll see what happens in
It's
Q2.
late, man. It's late. It should have been, they started cutting last fall. They should have kept it into the spring. And then now they could be raising again, but it's all late.
I would have kept it steady and raised, right?
Yeah, I know you
Inflation.
would.
I,
I know
I
you would.
listen.
You
Inflation.
trade Swiss watches, man. So
Yeah,
I know,
yeah, right.
but I think it's late. I think it should have all happened in the spring. And then right now we could be looking at potentially at cutting. I mean, at raising.
Well, then you raise, and then the market tanks, and then it's politically optically bad for Trump, right?
Oh yeah. But markets would be in a different position.
Trump's polling numbers are you can correlate that with the stock market.
Of
That's the
course.
way it is. In
Yeah.
his mind, that's
In
what it is.
his mind,
Yeah.
but it's not reality.
No, of course not.
So okay, what else? Anything else?
No, I think we covered it. Buy Swiss watches,
Buy Swiss watches,
buy Tony's coffee.
buy my coffee, and
What else we got?
and life is good, right?
And life is
So
good. That's right. Just don't get your kids in club volleyball
right, exactly.
for your financial and mental security.
That's right. All right, Albert. Thanks very much. Have
All
a
right.
great weekend. Thank
Yeah,
you. Bye.
thanks.